saw life. I love that, Marion. We take that for granted, right? So keep those words coming in. I see the word awakening, and I saw the word kindness, so critical, especially in these very unkind and uncertain times. So I want to just welcome everyone. Keep them coming. We've got folks still jumping in to join us, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We try to get started by 9:05, so keep the words coming. Intentional. Thank you, Lejeune. Good to see you. Wonderful. Laura says respect, vulnerability from Hector. Excellent. Authenticity. And I think that's Zoe. I hope I'm saying that right. And joy. Ooh, joy. That's actually, I might have to say grace and add joy to mine. But I want to make sure that we give everyone a chance to kind of get their words in. But I will go ahead and get us started. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to the Diversity Leadership Alliance 2023 webinar series on equity and social justice. After over 21 years of driving progress around DEI, our conversations are continuing. And now we move into the year where we are creating DEI actionable items. So what a appropriate way to end the year, right? To talk about alignment between DEI initiatives and actual funding. My name is Joanna Deshay, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as Executive Director of DLA and have done so for the past 8 years. It might be 9 for now. And before I bring on our amazing DLA co-founder, Mr. Marion Kelly, to share some 2023 reflections with you, I wanted to remind everyone that conference is right around the corner. If you have not registered, if you have not purchased your tickets, definitely do so. It is November 2nd and 3rd, and the DLA conference is entitled Actions Speak Louder. It's the idea of creating sustainability around equity and inclusion. So definitely mark your calendars. We want to make sure you are all in attendance. And what I'll do is just right here in the chat area, I'll go ahead and drop the link to the conference so that you all can kind of see that. Click it for everyone there. Click on that. You can see all of the workshops that we have, all of the bios that we have, and you'll get a chance to see kind of run of show. Now, what's really great is this is the first year that we're going back in person, y'all. We have not met in person in quite some time. So I want to make sure that you all are able to join us and that you'll be able to just spend some time in that space. We're talking more about moving the needle. So I really want to make sure you guys are able to join us for that. What I want to remind everyone about is that we bring together thought leaders, experts, and passionate advocates, and we'll do the same for conference, to explore innovative strategies and ideas and best practices around how to change the system, right? The systemic change that we're looking for. As we all know, racism and inequities are built into many systems, education, healthcare, so the disparities are great. I want to ensure that we are recognizing at this point our special conference sponsors and also sponsors that keep these workshops at no cost. Again, we're trying to make sure we're bridging any hurdles that folks have to access to this information. So I want to just take the time to thank Mayo Clinic, Channel 12 News, and SRP. And just so you know, ticket sales are open for our conference tickets. So if you want to purchase individual tickets, you can do so. We do have some corporate sponsors that I want to make sure that you know we've got quite a few corporate sponsors. I see Stephanie has her hand up. I don't know if Stephanie has a question, but Stephanie, could you drop it for me into the chat area and I'll make sure we get it answered so we can make sure we're on track and kind of focus for today's program. I would greatly appreciate that. You will have a chance at the end of Nona's presentation to ask some questions. So please start jotting those questions down in the Q&A area. I'll make sure I refer to that. And make sure that you're asking your questions and keep the chat going. That's how we kind of check for understanding to ensure that we're all on the same page. What I would like to do now is I would love to bring on with me our very special co-founder, Mr. Marion Kelly. Good morning to you, Mr. Kelly. He is a mentor. He is a friend. And one of the great souls that created this dynamic organization that we've been working through an app for about 25 years. And I would love for Marion just to greet you and give you a few words. Marion?
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thank you all for coming to the workshop. This is a labor of love for me. This is not something I get paid for. This is that additional work that sits on your desk. I am grateful to work for an organization, Mayo Clinic, that supports this kind of endeavor in our community. My co-founder and dear colleague, rest her soul in heaven, used to always say, right in the middle of community is you and I. Without you and I, there is no community. And so thank you for building this DLA community today. And we hope that what we hear today will be ripples on the water that will carry back to the places in which you come from, whether they're corporate organizations, community-based organizations, community of faith, or little old me. Wherever that is that you find yourself, we hope that what you learn today, what you hear, resonates with those communities. Um, I want to thank Nona Lee, even before she starts, for her presentation. This is not her first time, so we don't have to be as gentle with her because she understands who we are, what we do, and how we do it. So have those questions ready. No question is a bad question. We want you to have clarity of mind. I'd also like to remind you that roadmaps lead you to a destination. But we're not being prescriptive here about how you get to that end. It is just that. There are stops along the way. If you drive an electric vehicle and you go more than 400 miles, you're going to have to stop and charge up. It's the same way with your destination journey to get to a best practice, equity, inclusion, belonging destination. And so, because you're at point A, it doesn't mean that you won't get to point B. We're going to provide the roadmap for you to get there, but it's up to you, the mileage that your vehicle can take on that charge to get to the next charging station. And so, as we are on this journey of diversity, inclusion, equity, justice, belonging, all those things that we look at when we talk about what used to be just diversity, there's going to be something there for everyone. Know that in a dialogue, and Christine and I were very direct, very intentional, and very strategic about what we created. We are creating a platform for dialogue. Now, when you have critical dialogue, there should be no expectation, nor should it be prescriptive, but it is a roadmap for you to consider. We want to create safe spaces for dialogue. This is not a political pulpit. This conversation about equity, despite where one sits politically, is a conversation. And so trust me when I tell you that you are in a safe space. We have created that now for 20 plus years, 25 to be exact, 22, where we have met in person on a regular basis until the pandemic. And we continue to do so. Sometimes in life you have to pivot. If you're not ready for the pivot, you'll be left behind. So with that, I just want to thank you again for attending. One final thought, and this resonates with me because of a workshop we did this year, right here in 2023. We met with executive CEOs. It was invitation only to CEOs. The invitation was not transferable. You couldn't send your diversity and inclusion specialist. You couldn't send your VP for so-and-so and so-and-so. This was for CEOs because we knew how important it is for them to have this dialogue amongst their peers to create a trusted space for them to be real, authentic, and share what keeps them up at night. So I will tell you that I was blown away by how real and how raw those CEOs were. And I will also tell you that I was reminded that balance is key. So we can't spoon and shove that spoon into someone's mouth if they don't want to eat. If you have children, grandchildren, or someone you tried to feed before and they don't like peas, they're not going to eat it. And so we have to understand, what is a best practice? Where is your organization? Where is it that they want to go? Let's start there. So with that, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you again, Nona Lee, for being here again to help lead and guide this work. And I'm looking forward to hearing all of it.
Marion, thank you so much. It is so wonderful. I know how busy you are, sir. So I am so thrilled that you are able to join us. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your guidance. We are honored, all of us, to stand by you doing this critical work. So greatly appreciate it. And we will go ahead with introducing Nona Lee. So I want to just take a few minutes, first of all, to share with you that Diversity Leadership Alliance as an organization exists to bring voice to marginalized communities. We want to provide a forum for constructive dialogue, help to eradicate racism through strategic professional development. And together we are, as a business and community partner, want to enhance the workplace. We want to highlight the value of diversity as an essential part of any successful business model. We intend to cultivate change agents, that's all of you, right? Ready to lead with a renewed sense of bravery, urgency, and empathy. And through these vital workshops that you see us doing here, our annual conference, our Youth Leadership Academy, we intend to provide a safe space and place for you to have critical conversations that impart change. Before we move on, we want to take just a few minutes and do a land acknowledgement to identify the indigenous people, nations, and histories within our area. As you know, we're in Arizona, and the part of Arizona that we're in, we would like to acknowledge the Akimel O'odham, the Peeposh, and the Yavapai. We acknowledge these people, their ancestors, their descendants, and this, the land itself. At DLA, we're all about progression, and we know that the land acknowledgement is just the start, and we're working to move beyond that, to take that acknowledgement into actions, and are working with our Indigenous communities to do so. So this is our final DLA workshop of 2023. Can you believe it? And it is all about going beyond words into investing actual dollars in DEI to create action and impact. I want to just remind everyone very quickly, if you've been with DLA for some time, you know that this is a safe space and place. And as such, we want to ensure that everyone is being respectful and accessible, right? And that everyone can access the information without any disruption. You've read our community rules of engagement before. I'm just going to drop them right here in the chat, and I will read them to you very quickly, but they are simple. It's all about listening actively, right? And just committing to fostering better understanding. So I'm going to drop that in here for everyone, and you can see them with me. And it's all about refraining from being right. There's no such thing as, just I want to be right. Try to relinquish that right. Ask questions, seek clarification for understanding, and be respectful to the presenter and other attendees. Okay, and no one or two individuals should dominate a discussion. Approach each other with kindness and love. And as a community space, if you do become disruptive, I want you to know we reserve the right to remove you. So I see Mr. Kelly's hand up. Marion, did you want to add something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I meant to do this before I ended my comments, and I failed to do so. I think that all of us can agree that peace is important. And there is war going on in this land. And as we acknowledge the Israeli and the Palestinian fight, we just want to give 10 seconds of silence for peace. And if you would be so kind to mute yourself if there's noise, but want to give 10 seconds for peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marion. That was very important. And as you all know, DLA is an education organization, not a political organization or an advocacy organization. So, but we always are mindful of all of the things happening in the world because they affect our work and they affect who we are and they affect also how we show up. You know, that's the one thing, you know, when people are traumatized, you know, by the things happening in the world, it's very difficult to just say, check that at the door when you come into work, right? And be your genuine, authentic self when your genuine, authentic self may be hurting. Your genuine, authentic self may be scared, right? So it's really important that we're mindful of how impactful the culture and the environment and the politics affect how we show up. So that's a critical part. I want to share with you a little bit about today's webinar that you are joining us on today. This October webinar leading up to our annual conference on November 2nd and 3rd explores the powerful role of financial investments and how those financial investments can drive real change around DEI initiatives. By recognizing that true progress requires more than just words. They cannot be performative. Participants will learn, you all will learn today, how to strategically allocate resources to foster a diverse and inclusive environment. This workshop challenges all of you and me, right, to move beyond just mere rhetoric, to create tangible change that aligns DEI strategy with meaningful financial commitments and contributions. Attendees today will gain insights into effectively budgeting, yes, making it a line item on the budget for DEI efforts, measuring impact, and identifying meaningful, high-impact projects. So today we're going to unlock the potential of your DEI investment and drive positive transformations that will help bridge the gap between intention and implementation. So enough of me. Let me bring our dynamic presenter on so you can spend some time with her and hear about all of the amazing things that she does, has done, and will continue to do. So I will add Nona as I read her bio right now. Good morning to you, Nona. Nona Lee is the founder and CEO of Truth DEI, which is a consulting firm helping organizations determine current and future growth opportunities and strategies in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Nona consults leadership teams within an organization on current DEI truths, provides strategies and trainings to executive growth and change, and speaks at corporate events on related topics. She has a litany of things she's done, but I'll just share a few with you now. Her past experiences include leadership roles in the sports industry, including serving as Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer for the Arizona Diamondbacks Major League Baseball franchise for several years. She has also led the organization's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts from 2020 to 2022. Nona believes very strongly that the time is now for us to face the truth about diversity, equity, and inclusion in our organizations and educate and empower ourselves to move towards transformative change. Ladies and gentlemen, DLA family, please welcome Nona Lee. Nona, good morning to you.
Good morning, Joanna. Thank you for having me. Delighted to be here this morning. And thank you all for being here as well. I'm honored to be here to talk with you today about investing actual money in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and going beyond performative gestures and tokenism. And I apologize for the typo there on this slide. I apparently had a little bit of a moment there. So before I get started, I'd really like to share a story with you, tell you a story about a 6-year-old girl. So this 6-year-old girl used to go spend her summers in Natchez, Mississippi with her grandparents. And she loved being there every summer with them. And she particularly loved their front yard and their house. And so as you can maybe figure out by now, we jumped ahead a little bit, that little 6-year-old girl was me. I used to love being there. One of the things I loved most was the way that my grandparents' front yard was set up, where they had this cool porch. And at the bottom of the porch, there was a hill that ran all the way down to Franklin Street at just the right angle. And so I was out there one day playing with my sisters and my sister and my cousins when my grandmother, who was ordinarily just a very chill person, she came running, screaming out of the house saying, "Get in the house, get in the house." I had no idea what was going on because I'd never seen her like this before, but of course I was going to listen to her. So I got up to go in the house. I was rolling down the hill and running back to the top and doing it over and over again as kids do. And I got up to go in the house. And as I did so, I looked over my left shoulder and I saw this large group of people coming down Franklin Street towards my grandparents' house. And some of them were walking, some of them were on horseback, but they were all dressed from head to toe in white. I didn't know who they were. I went into the house and asked my grandmother what was going on. And she explained to me that these people were the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, and they didn't like us because of the color of our skin and might hurt us. So as you might imagine, that was a pivotal moment in my life. My innocence was forever gone. Because for the first time in my life, I understood that there were people who hated me and might hurt me just because of the color of my skin. And imagine what it was like for my grandmother to have to tell your 6-year-old grandchild and your other grandchildren that there are people who didn't know anything about her, who hated her just because of the color of her skin. So, from that moment on, my life would never be the same, because I would always have to worry about how I would be treated because of the color of my skin. And later I would learn because of my gender and because of my sexual orientation. And sadly, that was just the beginning of many instances of racism and discrimination that I would experience and still continue to experience in both my personal and professional life. So, that's why after more than 22 years, I resigned from my position last year as Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer of the Arizona Diamondbacks to speak the truth about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's what we're going to do today as we learn more about why DEI is so important and why it's so important to invest in it. And some of you may wonder, what probably makes me so qualified to do this work. And, I'm not just a recovering lawyer. I became a certified DEI professional while I was working for the Diamondbacks and led those efforts, as Joanna mentioned, and, fell in love with the work and feel like this is my purpose. I want to start with some discussion guidelines, and I won't go into great detail about them because, Joanna already spent some time going over your rules of engagement, basically. And so there are some rules that should be to the left there about safe space, but we won't. There they are. Sorry, the slides are set up oddly. And so we'll try to work with that as best we can. But, of course, we want this to be a safe space, which is, let's suspend judgment and really lean into curiosity here. All questions are good questions, and it's really important that we respect each other's opinions and perspectives. And, I would also very much like for this to be a brave space. And what that means is that we really need to push ourselves in order to continue to grow in this area. And part of that is understanding that there's some discomfort that accompanies that. But it's important that we not run from that discomfort and we sit in it. Because of that, we'll learn and we'll grow. And if it becomes too uncomfortable, what I'd ask you to do is just lean into curiosity, because that can really help us get past that discomfort. All right, so I was asked to talk about investing real money instead of performative gestures and tokenism. So let's start with just reviewing what performative DEI is. And I'm going to ask you that question first and ask you to put your answers in the chat. Just very quickly. And thank you, Joanna, for your comment. It was a scary visual for me to see as a child. And, that's true for many kids, even as we experience the things we experience today. So the question is, what is performative DEI? So if you can just quickly put your answers in the chat, that would be wonderful. Just a few words. All talk and no walk. Yes, thank you. DEI because it looks good, glib, window dressing. Absolutely. Thank you all for those responses. And you're all right. I mean, performative DEI occurs when, seeing an increase in performance due to investment in DEI. Well, that's where we hope to get to. And that's actually not performative. That's actually doing the work. But yes, when, Elizabeth, no actionable works to create and press change. Absolutely. Just talk. Thank you all for those responses. What performative DEI is, it happens when an organization, as you all have pointed out, they say all the right things and, make right plans, maybe even to bring DEI into the culture, but then they don't actually do anything. Sometimes it's because it gets too hard or it's too distracting, or they don't actually want to invest the money in it. And so that's what we don't want to do. I mean, some examples of that are, some of you may have experienced this or certainly heard about it. After George Floyd's murder, many organizations saw what other organizations were doing, and so publicly declared themselves to be champions of people of color, but ultimately didn't take any action or any meaningful action. And they permitted any efforts they were taking to fizzle out because the work was just too hard. So, what's important to remember is that DEI is not a short-term project, right? And it's not performative. We have to hang in there and actually get to the work. So, let's talk briefly about tokenism. Tokenism is the practice of making only a symbolic effort to do a particular thing. And sometimes it's by recruiting someone from a particular group of people to show that you have representation, to give the appearance of equity, but it's not really there. And tokenism, like performative gestures, have something in common. They're not authentic. And it's not what we want to do with our DEI efforts. I mean, when we think about DEI, in order to get to investing, we first have to have a clear understanding of our why and why DEI matters in order to help us understand where we need to go. So I'm going to talk briefly about that. Why does DEI matter in the workplace? Why invest real money in it? There are a few reasons that it's tremendously important from a business perspective. And I'm not going to spend too much time on the business case because I suspect at this point in your learning journey this year, you all have heard a lot about that. But I do want to just cover it briefly because it's important. It's an important reason why we should invest in DEI, the business case. And it's important to understand that, DEI has been the right thing to do for a long time, but that hasn't driven change. What has begun to drive change is that DEI drives a bottom line impact. And more importantly, and this is what I want to focus on in terms of your why, is that it's a business imperative because of the changing world. And in short, because of the changing world, and we're going to talk about that, businesses either have to change with it or get left behind. So let's very quickly go over the bottom line impact, the business case. And Kyra, you can just go ahead and click until the screen is there. McKinsey & Company's 2020 analysis found that companies that are in the top quartile for diversity on executive teams are more likely than ever to outperform less diverse peers on profitability. And these are companies that are led by diverse management teams. And what does that mean? That diverse management teams that are ethnically diverse are more likely, 35% more likely to have above average profitability, and diverse management teams that are gender diverse are 25% more likely to have above average profitability. So there's a clear business advantages in terms of bottom line impact to diverse management teams. In addition, highly inclusive organizations, according to McKinsey & Company, the Harvard Business Review, and Corporate Executive Board, showed measurable financial results as it relates to cash flow per employee revenue and meeting financial targets. And you can see those study results here. Highly inclusive organizations generate 2.3 times more cash flow per employee, 1.4 times more revenue per employee, and 120% more capable of meeting financial targets. So the research is clear. And based on this research, it could be expected that any business that becomes highly diverse will have similarly successful outcomes. And Kyra, if you can go to the next slide, according to a study by the Boston Consulting Group and the Technical University of Munich, diverse management teams are also more innovative and have 19% higher revenues as a result. And it shows that there's a significant positive relationship between innovation and industry background, country of origin, career path, and gender, which are all different dimensions of diversity. Research also shows that DEI leads to innovation, which makes for better products. And people from different backgrounds have different perspectives that directly influence how a product's made, who it serves, and how it functions. And they also help refine and enhance processes. And so diversity of thought is essential for growth. Now, finally, with respect to the business case, research shows that organizational diversity, equity, inclusion boosts productivity. Employees work harder and better together and stay longer because leaders and peers value diverse perspectives and backgrounds. And you can see some of the statistics here. Research shows employees, they work harder, 12% harder. They're more likely to stay, 19% more likely to stay. They collaborate much better, 50% better with their peers. And 95% of all respondents across all demographics and industries agree that they have something to learn from people who are different from themselves. So the business case for organizational DEI is clear. It not only boosts the bottom line, though, organizational DEI, but it's now a business imperative due to the changing world. So as the World Economic Forum has recognized, the world is changing and the business case for diversity in the workplace is overwhelming. For me is the most compelling reason for businesses to take DEI seriously, is the changing world. And while I'm not suggesting that the sky is falling, the research shows that the world is changing in ways that can have a tremendous positive impact on businesses that change with it. So some of the ways, let's talk about some of the ways the world is changing. First, demographics are changing, and hopefully you can see this slide. I know there's a lot here, but it's important information. The U.S. is becoming, this is a U.S. Census Bureau. The U.S. by 2044 will be majority minority. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, women make up nearly 51% of the U.S. population already, and that's going to continue to grow. According to the HRC report, Human Resource Campaign, nearly 8% of the U.S. adult population are likely LGBTQ+, and that is going to grow tremendously over the coming years. And here's a really important fact in terms of changing demographics is that millennials make up the largest segment of the U.S. population by considerable numbers, and Gen Zers are right behind them. And 75% of the global workforce will be millennials by 2025. And, what this is important. This is important because millennials and Gen Zers highly value diversity, equity, inclusion. And so that's the other reason that DEI is a business imperative. Kyra, if you can go to the next slide, is that with these changing demographics, values are changing. I've already said millennials highly value diversity, equity, inclusion, and they've been looking for it for years. A 2018 report showed that 74%, 3/4 of millennials believe their organization is more innovative when it has an inclusive culture. And guess what? Millennials are at the point in their career where they're going to be leading organizations that you want to do business with. if you're a business owner. And if you're an employer, you're going to want to hire them. And it's important for them to have diverse, equitable, inclusive organizations where they have a sense of belonging and where people are treated justly. According to a 2021 report, currently 50% of all employees said they would consider switching jobs for a company with a more built out DEI strategy and with greater pay equity. And the 2021 survey showed that of all adults 18 to 64, 51% said they would be more likely or much more likely to support a company that makes a public commitment to DEI initiatives. Along with these changing values, businesses need to consider changing consumer buying power as the world is changing. So Kyra, again, if you could go to the next slide. According to the Selig Center's 2021 Multicultural Economy Report, from 1990 to 2020, the spending power of the Hispanic market, which is the largest market in the minority market in the United States, it grew to 1.9 trillion in 2020, which was an 87% increase over a decade, and it's continuing to grow. Asian American buying power is at $1.3 trillion, or it's $1.3 trillion larger than the GDP of many countries, and African American buying power rose to $1.6 trillion in 2020. That was 3 years ago. I need to update these, but you can see that consumer buying power is changing in ways that people don't think about, largely because of stereotypes that they have about other demographics. Also, the buying power of LGBTQ plus Americans is, at last report when I updated, is $1.1 trillion, but it's actually higher than that now. And the purchasing power of US women, remember this is 51% of the US population, ranges from $5 trillion to $15 trillion annually. And women control more than 60% of the personal wealth in the United States and control or influence 85% of spending. And an often overlooked population, US immigrant-led households had $1.3 trillion collectively in spending power. And that was in 2019. So that has grown too. And Zoe, thank you. Nearly 30% of Gen Z identify as LGBTQ plus. Yes. And so all of this is significant for a number of reasons. The world is changing. And if we don't change with it as businesses, we're going to be left behind. Because the train has left the station. The sky isn't falling, but the train has left the station. It's not coming back. This is why it's so important to invest in diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's the cost of not investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, it can lead to a toxic workplace because there's not that culture of that sense of inclusion or belonging. It can lead to low employee morale, lost business opportunities. I just told you, shared some statistics with you. People support an organization that makes a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. People want to work for organizations that make those commitments. So you're losing business opportunities, or can lose them, if you don't invest in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Increased turnover rates, because of the statistics I shared with you. People want to work for companies that invest in are serious about DEI. And if you don't invest in diversity, equity, and inclusion, as the world changes, you have a serious risk of being left behind. So, what are some other costs of not investing? We talk about employee turnover. For each employee lost to attrition, the cost to a company could be 50 to 250% of their annual salary. It's a lot of money. The average tenure for a chief diversity officer is now less than 2 years, about a third of other executives, and the turnover is really high for them, especially at this point in time. There's a cost to that. And, in reality, as in 2022, 33% of DEI professionals lost their jobs, as compared to a 21% attrition rate for non-DEI professionals. And In 2022, chief diversity officers were the only C-suite positions to experience hiring declines. Employee morale is going down because people from historically underrepresented groups feel like they have a target on their backs. So, and frankly, there's was a new recent survey of 600 companies of different sizes that revealed that an average DEI team has only 3 members, if there even is a DEI team, or if a company still has a chief diversity officer. And here's another statistic I want to share with you, that 92% of 3,000 workers surveyed said company culture, a key characteristic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, impacts their intent to stay with their employer. So if you aren't investing in diversity, equity, inclusion, there's a real risk, and there's a loss of opportunity costs for those who are investing are having. And so right now, those companies that are putting their foot on the gas, even in the face of the attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, and affirmative action and everything that's happening, they have the greatest advantage in terms of business success going forward because of all of the benefits that diversity, equity, and inclusion bring to the table. So let's talk about some of those. Here are some of the benefits of investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion. 93% of companies who have diversity targets reported they've been moderately to extremely successful at achieving those goals over a year. So by investing in it and focusing on it, there can be tremendous success. And, we talked about commitment to DEI, and certainly we're going to do that. And organizations that have a strong commitment to it score well on the 5 pillars that track workplace health. And workplace health is so important because it's important to employee retention and to employee turnover. So what are some of the pillars that track workplace health? Do leaders create a strong sense of belonging? Do we request and value the input of employees? Are they able to participate in the process? Do they have a seat at the table? Do they have a voice that's valued? Do people's colleagues use their power? Are they allies in the workplace? Is curiosity encouraged, or is the approach to the culture, this is the way that we've always done it? Are honesty and integrity core values of the organization? More than 80% of employees whose companies have a genuine commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion would recommend their company to women. More than 70% would recommend the company to non-white employees and employees with different religious views, and more than 50% of them would recommend the company to LGBTQ plus people. So the genuine commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion is tremendously impactful. And the reality is, this last bullet point, this is a significant opportunity to engage top talent. And there's a battle for top talent right now. And it's an indisputable sign that investing in inclusive companies and inclusive cultures can shore up a company's future success, because you have an opportunity to get top talent who want to be there and who will run through walls for you. So let's talk about a couple of success stories. Intel. In 2015, Intel pledged $300 million to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in their workforce culture, and clearly long before George Floyd and before it was popular to do so, but they understood the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion and the need to actually invest real money in it. And so what did they do? They did what's really important in order to diverse DEI success, and that's what you set goals. You set goals and strategies, and you work towards those goals. That's part of the investment. It's an investment of time, talent, and treasure. And because they did that and they were focused on it and they actually invested money in it, they exceeded their goals, with women and underrepresented minorities making up 27.8% and 15.3% respectively of their US workforce by 5 years later. and this is significant. Again, another benefit of investing in DEI. They also saw a positive impact on their bottom line. I mean, so the research in actual stories from other companies shows that there is a benefit to investing. This 2019 study showed that Intel's DEI efforts contributed to a $1.2 billion increase in revenue for them. So that's the return on the investment. That's why it's so important to invest. Another success story where the investment was and the focus was somewhere else. Salesforce, they wanted to increase diversity in their workforce. So their strategy was to invest in implementation of free online training in technology skills to anyone who wanted to take the online training, regardless of their background or experience, because they realized that by opening up and providing that opportunity to people from all backgrounds, they would have people qualified and interested in working in their workforce. And as a result of that strategy, they were able to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in their workforce by 18% in just 1 year. That's a significant increase in 1 year by investing in processes that remove barriers and provide access to opportunity for everyone. As a result of this strategy, Salesforce saw a positive impact on their business. A 2018 study showed that Salesforce and other companies with diverse sales teams are more innovative and, again, have higher revenue. These are real stories, not just the research, but the facts are clear. One more for you. Unilever. Unilever's approach was to implement a program aimed at eliminating harmful stereotypes in advertising and the media. And they did so by partnering with other companies and organizations to actually promote diversity and inclusion in advertising media. So they invested, again, their time, talent, and treasure in really trying to come up with the strategy that would affect change. And it really paid off for them. You know, they saw a positive impact on their brand reputation. A 2018 study showed that consumers are more likely to buy from companies that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in terms of bottom line impact, the 2017 study showed that, and this was before the 2018 study even, obviously, that their brands with more diverse teams grew 50% faster than those with less diverse teams. So again, the return on the investment in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Tanika, I apologize, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate you raising that for me. And you know, again, I was reading statistics really from other places, but I don't disagree with you, and I will do my best to refrain from using the term minority going forward, because I understand what you're saying. I understand the connotation, because it gives the impression or assumes that people from underrepresented communities are less than and underrepresented populations, and certainly they are not. And so thank you for calling me out on that, and I hope you'll accept my apology for that. Yes, we are global, Joy. Thank you. You know, this is a learning journey for all of us, and I appreciate that. And I will use more thoughtful language going forward. So thank you all for that opportunity to learn and to do better. I appreciate it. Now I'm going to ask you about your DEI truth. Oh, my pleasure, Tanika. And I appreciate you accepting my apology. Now, I'm going to ask you about your DEI truth, and this is going to be anonymous, but I'd love for you all to take out your phones and go to pollev.com /Nona Lee 593. And what I'd like to ask you about is really where, and we'll do this anonymous poll, sort of check and see where everyone's DEI maturity level is right now. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to get to the poll. All right, Joanna, just so I can sort of test how long it takes, can you let me know whether you're there now? Whether you've had enough time to get there?
Yep, I'm there now. So I'm doing
Okay,
the call. Yep,
great,
got it.
great, thank you. All right, well, if you can all just, and some of you already started, that's fantastic. We want to find out which maturity level best describes your organization. And Kyra, if there's a way that people can see the whole thing, because there's 5 levels of DEI maturity. And so perhaps if you all can just go ahead and respond, and then we'll find a way to scroll down on the screen and see what the responses are. Yes, we can do that. So I'll give you another second to finish. And I appreciate you all taking the time to respond to this. Because, you know, and I'll say this as you're answering, why this matters is because it's really important to know where you are and acknowledge where you are, to move to the, you know, from promises to results to where you want to be. So the first level is, let's see, Kyra, can you scroll down so I can get just an overall view? Go down a little bit. Okay, so the great majority of you believe that you're at the tactical stage, which is the DEI has been connected to your business initiatives and the outcomes in at least pockets of the organization. And, you know, so what I want to do is start at the beginning and just go over, you know, talk about what these maturity levels are. So awareness. DEI is new to your organization and you're just becoming aware of its importance, and that's fantastic. What's important is that you're aware, and 17% of you are there, and that's going down now a little bit, but that's fine. But I will tell you that based on the overall survey results of 10 interviews with 10,000 employees in 6 different countries, 14% of those surveyed were in this stage. So you're not alone. And it's really reflective of where many people are. Are you at the stage of being compliant? And what that means is DEI in your organization is focused on compliance with EEOC and with other legal requirements. That's awesome. 20% went up to being aware. And, you know, that's where we start. We become aware. And then we have to figure out how to move from there, how we invest to get to the next level. Compliant. 10% of you are there, and we're doing DEI, but it's strictly to really comply with things. And it's not so much about the business, the moral case or the business imperative, necessarily the business case. And, you know, in the survey that I talked about of 10,000 employees, 31.6% felt their company was stuck here. And so many have moved beyond just compliance, who are past awareness, and that's good to see. Are you at the tactical stage, which means that DEI has been connected to business initiatives and outcomes in certain areas of your organization, but perhaps it's not woven throughout the organization? Well, 45% of you are. And that's phenomenal, because in the survey of 10,000 employees that I talked about, only 15.6% were there. So many of you are way ahead of the game, and I'm delighted to see that it's connected in pockets of the organization, and hopefully we can expand beyond that, which really takes us to the next level, which is the stage of being integrated, where DEI is a part of everything that you do as an organization, and not just internally, but also externally. And 15% of you are here, and which is right on track with the results of the survey of the 10,000 employees, which was at 15.6%. Where we ultimately want to get to at the end of the day is sustainable DEI. And that's when the DEI efforts are best in class and remain strong over time through our efforts to continuously improve and evolve. And, this is important, sustainable, because the reality is, DEI is not a destination. We don't get there. It's a journey, and it's a continuous journey. And that's what sustainability is about. 10% of you believe you're there. In the survey of 10,000 employees, 16% felt we were there. So our goal is really over time for everyone to try to move towards sustainable DEI efforts, but that takes time and it takes strategy. So why does it matter what stage you're in? Why did I ask this question and ask you to think about this? Kyra, if you can go to the next slide. Why it matters is because if you know what stage of diversity, equity, inclusion you're in, you can focus your energies on the right activities. It doesn't, often people will try to invest broadly in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they're not ready for that yet. And so it's really important to know where you are so that you can invest in the right activities that'll make it more likely that you'll have success. Otherwise, people invest without strategy. They invest broadly. Perhaps they even start with investing in diversity. I've had this happen a lot where we're going to invest in bringing diverse candidates, increasing in our pool of diverse candidates, hiring more diverse candidates. That's great. But what does your culture look like? Is it inclusive? Will it support diversity? So it's not just a matter of investing, it's about investing strategically. So how do we integrate DEI into both our strategy and culture? Well, we have to start at the beginning. We really do. And we have to start with our leaders. And that's not to say that we stay just with the leadership and the leadership drives everything, because that doesn't work either. That's key to get started because you need buy-in from leadership, and not just buy-in, participation from leadership in order for DEI efforts to ultimately work. But we also need bottom-up participation. But the first thing that has to happen is that leaders have to be on board. They have to acknowledge the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in achieving their business goals. If being the right thing to do isn't enough, and for many years it hasn't been for a lot of people, a lot of businesses, because they're more focused on business. If the business case isn't enough, then let the business imperative of the changing world be enough, and understand that it's important to you being able to continue to succeed and thrive as a business. So what do leaders need to do strategically? They have to be very vulnerable and clear and authentic about their commitment to DEI. And they have to do it consistently in order for it to be authentic to the rest of the organization, and to engender that sense of trust that they really mean it. And they also have to engage in actions that demonstrate their support for DEI initiatives, such as don't just say, okay, we're going to let you do DEI, go do it, and go do education sessions, but then the leaders never participate, or they're there but they never actually participate actively in the conversation and the discussion. So leaders really need to show that authenticity and that vulnerability. Like I said, it can't just be about leadership driving DEI efforts, though, or empowering a small group of people to do it. Employees have to be involved in the efforts at every level of the DEI process. Consider the fact that people support a world they help create. And so employees having a voice in things, and a voice that really is respected and valued and honored, will make it a tremendous impact in your DEI processes and strategies. So include employees. Some of you are at the stage of DEI maturity of tactical. You're at the tactical stage, and some are at the integrated stage. And at the tactical stage, what that means as DEI is integrated only into certain pockets of your organization. In order for a DEI program to be successful, in order to get to any meaningful, sustainable change, remember, we want to get to the maturity level of sustainability at the end of the day, it has to be integrated in all aspects of the organization's operations. It can't just be in certain pockets, and it can't just be certain groups' responsibilities. Diversity, equity, inclusion is everyone's responsibility. We go to investment, and this is key. Where do you start with it? Well, especially for those who are at the awareness stage of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as, and I say especially at stage, it's really important to everybody, and it's important on an ongoing basis. Education is key, because people need to be able to understand diversity, equity, inclusion, understand the whys, understand the strategies, importantly, get comfortable with it, get past that discomfort so that they're willing to understand this is what we value, and this is culture, and this is the expectation of how we engage together. This is a core value of this company. Me valuing people who are different from me, and engaging with them and understanding that we are all in this together. The other thing is that leaders, organizations and organizational leaders need to be willing to invest in beyond education. And let me just say, not just beginning education, ongoing education. The learning journey should always continue. I mean, I just learned on this call from Tanika, we have to be continual learners. This is a continuous journey. We have to be continual learners, and there's so much to learn. So continue the learning journey beyond the basics of diversity, equity, inclusion, education, beyond understanding what diversity, equity, inclusion are, and the barriers to diversity, equity, inclusion, which are largely unconscious or bias and privilege, microaggressions, and beyond even helping people understand the ways in which they can be allies and empowering them organizationally to do that. Leaders should also, as I was saying, measure and track the impact of their DEI initiatives to be sure that those initiatives are delivering a return on investment. One of the things that people get challenged with is spending money on diversity, equity, inclusion, and saying, well, what's the return on investment? How is it going to benefit my company? Well, we talked about the bottom line impact, and we talked about the need to invest because the world is changing, and how that's going to keep you relevant, particularly if you're proactive, as opposed to reacting when everyone else is already hiring top talent and is a desired workplace because they've gotten ahead of the game and they kept their foot on the gas here, even through discomfort, even through difficulty, and they've made it a priority in their organizations. So we'll talk about ways to measure and track the impact of those initiatives. And this is really key. And when we talk about the impact of diversity, equity, inclusion programs and them being authentic, is that leaders have to hold themselves accountable. They can't just say, okay, you guys go DE and I and not participate in it. They have to be accountable for achieving diversity, equity, inclusion goals. And you can't just say, go out and do it and do one strategic plan. First of all, you need a strategic plan, but do one strategic plan and not update it with the changes in your organization and revisit periodically. It's like any other part of your business. The investment is being strategic, building that plan, measuring, empowering people to do the work, because it's a core business function like any other area of the business. So another strategy, and this one is key, and I've mentioned this several times, Kyra, if you could go to the next slide. Success, it requires a commitment to the cause and staying the course. DEI is not a destination. We do not get there. We never get there and don't have to do anything. It's a continuous journey. And so it's important to approach DEI with the mindset of just that. It's not going to be quick. You're not going to just get there. You will make progress. You'll set goals and you'll continue to make progress. But we have to be committed to continuing the journey and not expecting immediate results, and understanding where you are in your maturity level and setting strategy according to that maturity level so that you can actually accomplish objectives to keep moving to the different maturity levels of diversity, equity, inclusion. So, and I will say this too, because I coach a lot of CEOs who often find themselves in the middle, being pushed back, as you can imagine, from different sides about how much time is being spent with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But true investment, money is important. It's key for all the reasons we've talked about, because this doesn't happen without the investment of time, talent, and treasure. But true investment in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this is particularly true for our leaders and CEOs, it includes being willing and prepared to hold your ground against both internal or external feedback, and say, this is who we are as an organization, this is where we're going. And when you can do that, I tell my clients this: you may lose some people on your leadership team, but you'll get other people who are also amazing people who are aligned with who you want to be as an organization. And a lot of this is, are you willing to invest in who you want to be? Because if you don't, it's not going to happen. Regardless of why you want to be where you want to be and who you want to be. Is it a business reason? Is it because it's the right thing? Is it because the world is changing, and to stay relevant, you got to be willing to stay the course. So have a statistic for you, really, that we talk about investment. And I will say, even before George Floyd, and this is from an article having to do with chief learning officers, from 2015 to 2020, there was 133% increase in executive with diversity, equity, and inclusion titles. And nearly 40% of Fortune 500 organizations had hired executives to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just want you to keep that in mind in terms of commitment, because in a minute we're going to talk about what's happening now. But so what does it mean to invest in DEI? I mean, I told you generally what that means, but according to the article by the Harvard Business Review, there are really 3 areas companies have to invest in to sustain DEI momentum, to get to that top level of DEI maturity. Diversity, equity, inclusion strategy. You cannot achieve or measure, or you can't, it's difficult to achieve things strategically if you don't have that strategy. And it's difficult to move towards success if you if you don't have accountabilities, and if you don't have measurements of success. So a DEI strategic plan is key. It's important to invest in that. It's important to collect and analyze the right data, really. But for a second ago, before we get to the data, I just want to say that, go back to strategy for a second. Strategies, it needs to be broad. We're talking about people who are at the sustainability level. It's woven throughout their organization, DEI. And so you need a strategy that has both representation goals that are data-driven and measurable, and also accountability systems, again, to make those strategies successful. And there was a study that showed that holding leaders accountable is one way to ensure continued compliance, even if you're at the compliant level. But only 28% of companies hold C-suite execs accountable for progress against DEI strategy. And 23% hold them accountable for pay equity, and 12% hold them accountable for gender equity. Only 5% of C-suite executives are held accountable for racial and ethnic diversity. And so a DEI strategy with these accountabilities are key, because the lack of accountability is why so many organizations are stalled in their DEI efforts in the face of what might otherwise be a strong DEI strategy. So accountability is key. Finally, collecting and analyzing the right data. Research shows that most organizations collect gender data and race data in their HR information systems, but then they don't use it. They don't analyze it and they don't use it in their DEI efforts. So they aren't reviewing the data regularly to see if their DEI efforts are working. And if they're not, how to adjust accordingly. So they just get stalled. So it's really important not only collect that data, but to analyze it and use it to be sure that you continue to move forward. Empowering the DEI leader for real. First of all, it's important to invest in DEI leader if you want to be successful in your DEI efforts, an authentic DEI leader. The research shows that organizations with a dedicated DEI leader are more likely to see gains in diversity at the management level than at organizations without a DEI leader. 58% of companies surveyed have a dedicated DEI budget, but only 21% have a senior role fully dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And only 12% of DEI leaders have a team under them that are dedicated to DEI work only. And this is significant. Only 9% of companies have a DEI leader who is at the same level of other chief executives. So DEI has not been valued as highly as other key areas of the business, and it should be. So responsibility without authority or the ability to hold organizations accountable is a recipe. It's a recipe for burnout for DEI executives, if there are one, or stalled progress. So we talk about investing, and empowering the DEI leader requires an investment of time, money, and access. And it also requires a dedicated team who can refine the organization strategy and focus on this. So many people want to put DEI under HR, and I appreciate that they're at least in the game and doing something, but HR is one area of a business. DEI, if you're doing it right, is woven throughout the entire fabric of your business. So you need someone who can focus on that. It's not just HR. And it's important for the DEI leader to be at the top, because they need to have the ear of the company's decision makers and the authority to hold people accountable. So if you don't have that, it's going to be difficult to get to that level of DEI maturity where you can sustain DEI success. And these are just some suggestions. There are many other ways you can invest in DEI as well, including investing in employee resource groups and the employees who run them, investing in ongoing education, investing in your organizational policies and procedures and having them reviewed for indicia of unconscious bias, and removing any barriers that exist to access and opportunities for people from historically underrepresented populations. So just very quickly, if you do invest in DEI, people want to know, they're often this question, well, what's the return on my investment? You know, how do I know it's going to work? Well, if you do it right in the ways that we just talked about, it will work. But it's really important that you measure the return on investment, especially for leaders, so that they're willing to keep going. How do you do that? You know, there are a number of ways. First, you can conduct a cost-benefit analysis. Compare the cost of implementing DEI initiatives to the benefits that result from increased DEI. Remember, these are just some of the financial benefits that we talked about, the bottom line impact. So do a cost-benefit analysis, and you will see that the cost of investing in DEI initiatives is fairly low compared to the potential economic benefit to the organization. Also, you know, another thing you can do, if you go to the next slide, Kyra, is, you know, use metrics to measure the impact of your initiatives over time. And the kind of metrics you can use is employee engagement metrics, retention rates? Are you retaining more employees? Are your employees more productive? Are they, is there more innovation? Also use metrics related to diversity. We talked about this. A lot of people get this data. Most companies have the data about diversity, but they don't use it. They don't analyze it. Use it to check on representation of underrepresented groups in leadership and the diversity of new hires to see how you're doing. These are ways to measure the return on investment in your DEI mission, vision, strategies. Also, there are external benchmarks out there you can use, both for your area and for your industry, to see how you're performing against other organizations and other organizations in your industries, and frankly against your own industry. So with that, I want to ask you to go back to poll everywhere. And thank you, Tanika. I appreciate that. Kyra, if you can go to the next slide. Oh, well, yeah, go back to poll everywhere. Hopefully you still have it up. And I'm just curious, and this is anonymous. Great answer. Knowing this information that we've just gone over, are you more or less willing to invest in DEI, knowing what you know? And I'm really happy to see that, at least at this moment, 100% of you are more willing to invest in diversity, equity, inclusion. And if you're on the fence about it, none of you are. I was going to just encourage you to think about why you're not, especially in light of the clear benefits to investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion in this changing world relative to the cost. So with that, I want to now just turn to, sort of wrap up this part of the presentation and leave more time for questions and discussion. But before I do so, when I do workshops and when I speak, especially when people are inspired to do more, and you all are, I ask you to take the Truth DEI pledge with me. And you don't have to come off mute. I mean, I'll read it, but I would ask you where you are to think about this pledge, to read it out loud with me, and to commit to this going forward so that you can move along on your DEI journey. So today, I choose to do better. I am open to change. I will seek the truth. I will commit to change, and I will see your humanity while doing so. I am the truth. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions and discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll have, if you don't mind, stop sharing the question slide. I'd love to actually bring on Marion. Marion, I hope you don't mind. I had sent you a note asking if that was okay, but to bring you into the conversation because of the work that you all are doing there at Mayo Clinic. I thought that there was just some points as we were talking that I thought was so relevant to the work that you all were doing. And just if you could kind of share the journey, especially the one where you all have dollars allocated to your DEI efforts. So I wonder if you could share that, and if you all could just have a conversation around that.
Thank you, Joanna, for the opportunity. Let me say first that thank you, Nona, as well. This is a journey, and this is not, I talked about a roadmap leading to a destination, but when something is ever changing, the destination also changes. So let's be clear in that. And as I think about the work that we're doing at Mayo, and I will tell you that there are probably few organizations that compare to the commitment and the work in the corporate realm as there is at Mayo Clinic. But with that, I will also say we have miles to go before we get to any temporary destination. And so I will start with telling this community that is assembled here today is that Mayo Clinic did make $100 million commitment to eliminating systemic racism within Mayo Clinic over the next 8 years. We've been on this journey for 2 years now. And that means multiple things. When you talk about systems changing, it is not an overnight sort of phenomenon. It takes a long time for that to happen. I will also tell you that absolutely, there's lots of window dressing that goes on in organizations, but window treatment is important. No one wants the curtains to be pulled and you see that there's the wizard or someone that's pulling all the levers. But it's important that there are some things in place that set the bar for where you start as an organization. And so whether they're interest groups or affinity groups, those are important things to have, but it's not a equity, diversity, inclusion initiative. It's part of it. There's recruitment, there's retention. Those are two different things. It's one thing to be recruited to a company. It's another thing to be retained by the company by continuously investing in your staff. In addition to that, it's important that we have statements about our mission, our diversity, equity, inclusion mission. But if it's only a statement and you can't scratch beneath it to find out that there's real work being done behind it, it means that you are not doing enough. And you are going to constantly, on any given day, executives are pushed. Half of the staff are saying, why are we doing this work in equity, diversity, and inclusion? Half of the staff are saying, why are we not doing more? So you have to find balance in that. And our work, and I'm not the diversity and equity inclusion director at Mayo Clinic. I used to be. But those of us that sit in those seats, our work is to bring balance to that, to push when we need to push, and to push back when we need to push back. However, each of our journeys are different. Each of our industries are different. But have a roadmap as to where you want to be and by what time so that you can measure it. If you don't measure it, it doesn't matter. And so you need measurable sort of timeline to make sure that you're on target to where you want to be from an equity, inclusion, diversity, belonging, justice, and all the other names that are within this space. But be committed to it and support those that are in position to bring those things to fruition. So with that, I'll just leave it there, Joanna.
Thank you so much. And Nona, I would love to just ask you the question, how do you address kind of the dichotomy of a group of employees saying we're not doing enough and a group of employees saying, why are we still doing this? And, can we move on? So how do you kind of reconcile those two very opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to, a commitment like in Mayo's case where they're doing the right things, but still getting pushback from both sides?
That's a great question, Joanna. Thank you for that. And I would say that Mr. Kelly hit it right on the head. It really is about balance. And, I have a client I'm working on that with right now, where one side feels they're pushing too hard and the other side is getting pushback from other, that it's too much. And the other side says we're not doing enough. And it really is finding that balance. And that's why maturity levels are so important. Because if you're at the awareness level, you can't try to push to tactical or all the way to sustainability right away. You can't. You have to go through the different maturity levels strategically and determine what that means for your organization and what initiative would work best for you. But there has to be balance. I mean, I would love for everybody to say, I want to do 100% transformative change, lead me through it. It's not realistic. It's not realistic. You have to meet people where they are. in their organization. You have to help them get over the barriers that they're encountering. And you also have to get people on a page of understanding about this, and that they're not at odds with each other. They want the same thing. It's just about how do we get there strategically and in terms of timing in a way that it actually works. Because if you push too hard, it's going to blow up. People are going to tap out. You're not going to make any progress.
Right. Thank you so much, Marion. Thank you so much for your comments. I want to, if I could, share with you a couple of comments, and a few I'll read that are questions that folks are asking anonymously, and a few they've asked to the entire group that I'll read. So the first one is around this idea of approaching a leadership team that is about talk and not necessarily accountability. So the comment was made that none of the survey options include organizations who say they are invested in DEI, but truly aren't. And this whole notion of it being really smoke and mirrors and performative gestures. So, you know, how do you approach a leadership team that is all about talk and not accountability? And what's really interesting in my training is they don't even know that they are. You know, for them, they're like, hey, listen, I wrote that down, you know, on a plan, so I'm good. You know, check that box. So how do we approach that and reconcile that?
Kindly, respectfully, but truthfully. You know, understanding that they think they are, and that perhaps at some level they want to be, but that what they're doing isn't authentic. It's not moving the needle, that it's performative in nature. And so really educating them about performative DEI and having them understand, I know you think this is diversity, it's not. And all that it's going to do at the end of the day is hurt you, because you're going to lose credibility. The credibility of your employee, credibility with your employees, with your customers, with your partners, all of that, with you know. So yeah, it's really about, but I also have learned, and it's just my approach to life generally, but in this work, kindness, respectfulness, and a lack of judgment, shame, or guilt is key, because it's not about that. It's not about that at all. It's about how we can move forward and be better together.
That's such a great response, and so timely. I chuckle because I shared this story in a training group. You know, when I have two teenage boys, right? So I have a 16 and a 20-year-old. And when they were about 3, you know, Nona, I would say to them, I want to be the question you can ask any, you know, the person you can ask any question to. Now, when they were 3, it was really cute. You know, why is this? And it was okay. So at 16, when I'm sitting at the dinner table and I get those questions, I'm like, oh, that is a really awkward question. I don't want to answer that. But you have to take the kindness approach. You said, and my kids will remind me, you said, I can ask you anything. Mm-hmm. So simply because the conversation is awkward doesn't mean you don't have the conversation, mm-hmm. right? You have it with grace, you have it with kindness, you have it with patience, with the understanding that the truth, like what's behind you, Nona, mm-hmm. it's not always easy to hear, but it's necessary. Yeah. And you want to be the person that they can come to for the truth, right? And feel like they can share that with you. So I appreciate that. I want to just read Matthew. I had to put my glasses on. I was like, I'm trying to read this all squinting. So Matthew had a question that he posed to everyone. Matthew says that he's a people leader in his organization with a team of about 16, and they're in a call center organization. He talks about the fact that he oversees quality and performance of the group, and he's working on his own personal growth, kind of in the DEI knowledge and awareness and promotion space. His question is, at this micro level of his organization, what would be your recommendation of specific actions that can have the greatest impact, even with what he considers a small group?
Yeah, I mean, I think you start somewhere, right? And some of that is with perhaps having open and courageous conversations about topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and start there. Maybe start a learning journey together. One of the things you can do with your particular group is say, you know, I really want to lean into this and explore this with you. so that we can be more inclusive. You know, maybe there's some books we can read together. Maybe we can have some lunch and learns. I mean, there's something you can do from wherever you are. And that's the beauty of diversity, equity, inclusion. You know, it can be your self journey. It can be bringing other people in. Maybe you all say, hey, let's watch this movie and talk about it over lunch, or let's read this book and talk about it over lunch. Whatever it is, there are small things you can do, especially if you don't have the budget per se to from the company to engage and bring in speakers or do formal DEI education. You can do that at your micro level, Matthew. And I think it's amazing that you want to do that, because you are effectively want to be a DEI leader in your organization and with your team. And I think that's amazing. Thank you for that.
I want to bring on Mr. Kelly. Marion, I saw your hand up, sir. I want to make sure I recognize you.
You know, there are a couple of things that I think are important for us to recognize, those of us who are in this space of wearing the hat of the equity, inclusion, diversity leader. And those hard truths are that we are employees of an organization. We work for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Part of our reason for being brought in is to protect the organization. And part of our reason for being brought in is to create the roadmap for the organization. Those two things don't always align. And so understanding that balance that I spoke of, that Nona has spoken of several times, it's important as being the go-between, because as the DEI leader in your organization, the other employees are looking to you to lead this effort. The CEO is looking to you to lead this effort, but we're looking forward to leading it with balance and understanding. And so transparency, communication, timeline are extremely important to being effective. And our job is to help our colleagues, those employees who are saying, why are we not doing more, understand what it is that we're doing and how we're going to get to the place that they think is important, that we know is important to the organization, with the leadership of the organization. So know that we're in a difficult spot. We're in a heavy seat to have those responsibilities to our leadership, to the communities in which our organizations live and are, and to the employees that work there who are interested in some destination for equity, inclusion, and diversity. And so this is a difficult spot, but we have to bring the balance. And our job is not to push any organization to a place that they're not ready to go. Mm-hmm. We have to prepare them to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And Marion, is so interesting because I said this in a training. I was having a tough time, trying to get to kind of meaningfulness, return on investment. And I had to stop in this DEI training I was doing. And I just said, I akin this to how we view safety within our organizations, right? We're always like, there's a safety number, work safely, there's safety protocols. So, and we don't say, let's not talk about safety this time. We've done it. We've done enough of that. We've reached it's, there's a destination to safety. There isn't. It's ongoing, and there are human errors, and, there are personalities and, different things involved. So if we could just think about building equity and DEI, right? Like we think of safety, and build it into everybody's job, it would be really fascinating to just see how we can evolve, right? And the different kind of language we could have around that. So I just wanted to kind of share that as Mary.
And let me just say, I agree with that wholeheartedly, Joanna. I mean, and if you really think about it, psychological safety is a part of this, right? It's a huge part of this, yes, in addition to psychological meaningfulness and availability, but it's that important. This is about, the people who make your business successful and make it run. And if they don't feel psychologically safe in your organization, that's a problem. So it's just about, and that just brought it to mind for me. I know you were saying something else just on a broader level, but yeah, it's so true.
So true. Marion, thank you so much. I would love to get to some of the other questions. I would love to read Dr. Cliff Moon's question that he has posted here in the chat. Dr. Moon talks about the fact that in some areas of the country, there has been pressure and legislative challenges to eliminate DEI initiatives in organization. So Dr. Moon's question is, can you suggest effective approaches and strategies to address these pressures and challenges?
Yeah, this is a really obviously interesting and hot button question. And I'm a human being, so I have varying thoughts on it, right? I'm trying to and I have to deal with companies who have different risk tolerances on this, right? And so as a person, for me as affirmative action and DEI or attack, I double down. That's my approach. And because I think we have to. I think it's scare and fear tactics, and that if we don't double down and if we back down, then we lose ground we may never regain. And I think that's why a lot of this is happening, because of fear and the desire to maintain power. I also understand the risk tolerance dynamic in that some people don't want to they're concerned about being sued and aren't in a position to take the battle on, so to speak. And so with respect to that, and as I said, this tugs with my personal position on this, and but from a business perspective, there are ways to continue to do the work without calling, we're doing diversity. Okay. So I think I said earlier that everybody's not ready for diversity in any event. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's to be about having diverse workforce. But what we're really about is providing an inclusive culture where everyone can belong, and where you want best of talent, and where you want to get to innovation and all of that. And in order to get to innovation, you need different perspectives.
Yes.
Right. And so focus on, that you want to have, you're focused on innovation in your business, right? How do you get innovation? By having different people with different dimensions of diversity and experiences at the table. And so it's not about quotas or, we want to have 50%, people of color on the leadership team by X date. It's about one way to continue to do the work and approach it would be focusing on the business need for innovation and where that comes from. Right. And it's from having people with different experiences, perspectives, and bringing everyone to the table. So, and that's the legal part of it too, I guess. Right. So I have that perspective as well. So that's probably more the legal part of it, is if I'm going to keep you out of trouble and from being sued, I would say continue to do the work, but shift what the stated focus of it is, right? That we need to be more innovative. What drives innovation? Different perspectives. So that's what we're focused on, different experiences. We want people from all backgrounds and places here, not for the purpose of having diversity or quotas, but because of the benefits of that diverse perspectives and people bring to innovation. So for me, I think that's one way to approach it. And yes, that's a long one. I'll let you read that, Joanna, while I'm talking about.
No worries.
But I agree. I do fear that more pressures are forthcoming. But and Joanna and I were talking about a new venture that I just launched. And part of the reason is because of the attacks that we're undergoing right now. And part of the reason is the desire to erase history and control information and education and what people know, instead of embracing where we've been so we can move forward. And so we have to be willing to stand firm in the face of pressures, or we lose ground. And the reason I say this is my experience is it's called Truth Retreats. It's an immersive DEI leadership retreat. It's in Montgomery and Selma, Alabama. We just launched last week with our first group. And it's incredibly impactful, and no one else is doing this. People go do the civil rights trail tours there, but no one is bringing the DEI component to it and helping people unpack that and strategize about what they can do going forward based on what they know. But what they will learn there, and what impacts me so much about the experience in Montgomery and Selma, is that what people did and what they risked and what they were willing to stand against so that African Americans could be treated like human beings and we're still fighting for the same rights in some respect, and fighting for equality and equity and all of that. But we lose all that if we don't stand firm against the efforts to destroy diversity, equity, inclusion. And again, this is my personal and my advocate and my activist side, that if we don't stand firm, we lose. So we have to find ways to not only stand firm, but continue to move forward, even in the face of fear. And if we can't do that out loud, then we need to find ways to strategically do it. And I'm here to help people find ways to strategically do that.
I love that. And the link is there for the retreat. And I would love for you all to consider that. Just as the comment that was posted, it's a long comment, so we won't read it, but we will address it later. But this idea of how do you fit in when there's already kind of an established, right, DEI within the organization? How do you fit in when you're interested, but that's not necessarily your role, if you would? So I love that you all are thinking about this. I want to just address one other anonymous comment in here before we kind of close out the day. Is this notion of employee resource group versus affinity groups. And then the comment was really, some people refer to employee resource groups instead of affinity groups. And it's been this person's experience that a few folks are kind of resistant, to using the term affinity groups. So what has been your experience about describing or labeling such groups?
Well, I find that in a business context specifically, that people often prefer employee resource groups. And there's a lot of research of it around it in that context, or business resource groups, because there's a difference between the two. Yeah. And employee resource groups can morph into, not just morph by nature, but by intention, into business resource groups, which benefits the business. But it really is depends on what people are more comfortable with. I think, and I've seen affinity groups used more like in the nonprofit sense when, for example, I'm on the board of the Sports Lawyers Association, past president of that organization, and we've started affinity groups there. We don't have employees, right? It's a nonprofit, but for our membership. And so in that context, I think it's more broad where with respect to businesses, they may have these affinity groups for their employees that are resources for them, which hence employee resource groups. So I think it really is just about what is a better fit for the organization. And yeah, I'd love to hear what Mr. Kelly, his perspective on.
Absolutely. Marion, sir.
So I was just going to add that I don't think that there's a major difference or preference for affinity versus resource group. However, just the terms themselves, words are powerful. Mm-hmm. When you think about affinity group, that's sort of self-serving of the individuals that want to join a group with this likeness. Mm-hmm. Resource groups has ROI for me. And so they're a resource to the communities from which they represent in the community for the organization. They're also allowing that employee to bring their full self to work. Mm-hmm. And to extend themselves to the community from which they come and be the bridge to bring the community back. And so from my perspective, the term resource group is much more powerful than affinity group. Just my perspective, and it actually has tremendously helped Mayo Clinic to reach some communities that we would otherwise not be in.
Exactly.
It's so true. And I see the comment there, Sarah. Thank you so much. And thank you for being such an advocate. I love seeing you in this space month after month for our webinars. Sarah makes the comment that they're also called business resource groups. Some are called business roundtables and other such variations. And in Sarah's experience, they have found that affinity group has become more of an outdated term in many organizations. So yeah, I think that's great to be able to. But the thing about it, I think that's most important is we don't want to create additional separation, right? The whole idea is to not to build a group of like-minded, but also those that are allies and co-conspirators, to have a space that they can come and say, hey, I may not be in this group, but you know, I am an advocate, I am an ally, I'm a co-conspirator, and I want to help move, you know, the needle on this topic. So I think it's important that regardless of what you call it, like my mom used to say, I don't care what they call you, you know, as long as there is respect, as long as there's intentionality, and as long as it's welcoming, as long as we make space for everyone. I think that's probably the most important aspect of this. And so, you know, that becomes something that you really have to see, like what resonates with the organization, what will people respond to? And the name might be one important factor of that. So excellent. Mr. Kelly, thank you so much. I'm going to close this out for the day. So any parting words before I do our closing piece?
I would only say, ask this group to help me thank Nona Lee for being here today and sharing her infinite wisdom over a 20+ year career within the sports industry, but more importantly, her lived experience. And so thank you so much for being here and sharing your heart as well as your knowledge. And I want to make sure that everyone is aware of the annual conference coming up. And I know you're going to plug it, Joanna, so I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today.
Thank you so much, Nona. Thank you again. I am so thrilled to reconnect with you. I think there's more work that we have to do together. So just know that for 2024, there's more to come. But I'm always delighted. I'm a numbers woman, and I think the numbers don't lie. You know, and as we start to, you know, because the business case sometimes is numbers driven, and you've got some thank yous also in the chat, just so you know. And oh, we've got some volunteers. Elizabeth, be careful now. So just so people don't know, we will hold you to your volunteer request. So yeah, and lots of thank yous for your session and for imparting such knowledge with us today. And so thank you so much. Any closing words from you?
Yes, I just want to, again, thank you so much for the opportunity, for the conversation, not just the opportunity to speak, but the opportunity to learn. Thank you again, Tanika, for that. And also, a few people asked about the Truth DEI pledge. I'm happy to share that, and you can send it to them, Joanna. And if there are other slides that of interest to people that they'd like to have, just let Joanna know, and I'm happy to share those as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. I am so grateful to all of you. What we don't take for granted is your time. We know that it is one commodity that none of us have enough of, right? So we're grateful for you taking the time to share with us today. The work we do here at DLA would not be possible without the important contributions from our volunteers, our sponsors, and my fellow board of director members. So I want to just take just a quick second to share with you who sits on the DLA board and who drives the conversation around the work that we do. You got a chance to meet Mr. Kelly, our co-founder, today, but as you know, the strategic direction really is about who is sitting in those seats. And as you can see, we go above and beyond to ensure that it's a diverse representation of individuals, and we're very happy to have those individuals leading the organization. You didn't get a chance to meet her today, but the education committee members are very diligent in their work in terms of building content for our monthly workshop, and they're led by the amazing Tondra Richardson, who had a work conflict she could not get out of today, but she sends her love and wishes you all the best and hoping to see you all at conference. And hats off to Maria Radloff with Via Maria. She's our webmaster and the person responsible for all the video content and graphics that you see on the website and in printed material on our YouTube page as well. We would not be able to do any of this work without the support of our amazing sponsors. So thank you to Mayo Clinic, to our friends at SRP, and to Tegna Foundation, which is Channel 12, for supporting DLA year in and year out and all of its programming. So I just want to make one little final kind of plea, if you would, right? We do so much, and I want to be able to just continue the work that we do. So I would love to just ask if you all would consider making a donation to DLA. This is our education committee and the diligent group of men and women that are meeting month in and month out to ensure that we have stellar programming. But if you are interested, would you consider supporting DLA? If you enjoyed the workshop today and the content, we want to ensure that we are not creating any additional barriers, right, for people to access. And as you know, access to information is one of the equity disparities that we experience because there's a cost, right? DEI trainings cost thousands of dollars, programs cost hundreds of dollars, and oftentimes people cannot get the information. So if you've enjoyed the work that we do, would you just, make a donation to DLA? We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and your donations may be tax deductible. So I want to make sure that you consult with your tax advisor. As I mentioned, we've got quite a few sponsors here that support the work that we do. And then leading up to conference, we've got University of Phoenix, PetSmart Charity, Medtronic, Perkins Coie, U of A College of Medicine, so many wonderful individuals that believe in the work that we do. And it's because of their support that we're able to really continue to get dynamic speakers like Ms. Nona Lee, and imparting such wealth of knowledge and content for all of you. So I just want to share with you all that it is all about change. So if you want to become a change agent, please volunteer. Please, we have a conference committee, we have a youth leadership academy. We have lots of opportunities for you all to volunteer and work with us. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen on that. And I just want to say to all of you, my final comments. Conference is coming up on November 2nd and 3rd. And if you would just go to the DLA website and check out all of the information we have there about conference, we would love to be able to welcome you. So with that, to all of you, I just want to say this. These are difficult times. These are stressful times, but these are also good times because we have life, we have breath, and we have the pleasure of being able to still hug the people that are here with us. So to all of you, I just have one thing I'd love to say as we close today. Please take care of self. Your mental health, your spiritual health, is really important. And as we are being attacked, it is really important that we protect our mental health, we protect our spirit, we protect our space. And so to all of you, take care of yourself and take care of each other. And we look forward to seeing you at the annual conference. Cheers to all of you. Have an amazing rest of your day. Bye for now.